Hello friends, the Indian politics has undergone stunning changes since 2004 when the United Progressive Alliance or UPA under Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh was in power. There have been ideological pivots, policy innovations, and institutional realignments. The coalition driven era of inclusive welfarism and cautious liberalization has morphed into a more centralized nationalist paradigm under the Bharatiya Janata Party or BJP led National Democratic Alliance or NDA government since 2014. Today, this evolution reflects not just a change in leadership styles but a profound reconfiguration of power dynamics. Domestic policies have shifted from consensus based social equity to executive led infrastructure surges. Foreign relations have transitioned from multilateral balancing to assertive bilateralism, even as global realignments are happening. Economic strategies have veered from export oriented openness to self reliance amid trade frictions. Defense priorities emphasize indigenization against persistent border threats. Educational reforms prioritize holistic skilling over rote learning, and the political culture has intensified from deliberative pluralism to polarized majoritarianism. These shifts have sparked debates on democratic erosion and equity gaps. As historian Ramachandra Guha observes, and I quote him, India's democracy is resilient, but its soul is tested by the temptations of strongman rule. Unquote. The UPA's inaugural term, that is 2004 to 2009, epitomized coalition's virtues and vices. It forged a rainbow alliance of 13 parties that prioritized social justice amid the ashes of the BJP's 2004 electoral defeat. Landmark legislations like the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act or MG-NREGA of 2005 guaranteed 100 days of wage employment to rural households. The Right to Information Act or RTI Act of 2005 empowered citizens against bureaucratic opacity. Such legislations underscored a commitment to inclusive growth. According to the World Bank estimates, these measures lifted over 271 million people out of poverty between 2005 and 2016 by channeling resources to the marginalized. However, economist Jean Reyes, a key MG-NREGA architect, noted that the scheme's success lay in its federalism, but also revealed coalition fragility because while states innovated, corruption siphoned off funds. UPA 2, 2009 to 2014, grappled with this inertia as allies like the Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam or DMK stalled reforms. This caused policy paralysis amid scams like the 2G spectrum allocation, which eroded public trust and fiscal discipline. The 2014 BJP landslide heralded a rupture. NDA, with its absolute majority until 2024, centralized decision making. Coalition partners were ignored. Domestic policies pivoted to Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas or development for all, manifesting in schemes like Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana or PMJ-DY, which reportedly banked 500 million unbanked by 2025, and Swachh Bharat, which claimed to have constructed 110 million toilets to combat open defecation. Infrastructure boomed. Capital expenditure surged from 1.5% of GDP under UPA to 3.3% by 2025, building 50,000 kilometers of highways and 200 airports. Critics, however, decry this as welfare populism masking cronyism. With Aadhaar-linked direct benefit transfers or DBT saving 2.7 lakh crore rupees in leakages but raising privacy fears after the 2018 Supreme Court ruling. BJP's seats dipped to 240 in 2024 elections. The NDA 3 was forced to give concessions like restoring state funding shares, hinting at a partial return to federal bargaining. Analytically, UPA's coalition fostered equity but bred inefficiency. NDA's model accelerates delivery but risks authoritarian overreach, as evidenced by the 2020 farm laws rollback and protests. In a nation of 1.4 billion people, this tension between inclusion and efficiency will define governance resilience. UPA once foreign policy was a masterclass in pragmatic non-alignment, navigating post 9/11 realpolitik with alarm. The 2008 Indo-US Civil Nuclear Agreement, clinched despite left front opposition, ended India's nuclear isolation. It also unlocked civilian technology and elevated its global heft. Since administration deepened ties with Russia via energy pacts and China border confidence building measures while bolstering SAARC and ASEAN forums. As former Foreign Secretary Sham Saran reflected, and I quote him, UPA's diplomacy was consensus driven, yielding stability but lacking boldness in a unipolar world. Unquote. The NDA era, by contrast, exudes multi alignment with agency, projecting India as a Vishwaguru through personalized symmetry, with the PM making over 100 foreign visits by 2025. Neighborhood first faltered with Nepal's 2015 blockade and Pakistan's post-Pulwama intransigence. Yet, Act East policy deepened Quad synergies against Chinese assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific. The 2020 Galwan clash spurred border infrastructure investments, doubling troop deployments. By 2025, amid Trump's second term, Indo-US ties strained under 25% reciprocal tariffs imposed in August, which targeted India's 45.7 billion trade surplus. Additional 25% tariffs were later imposed to punish India for buying crude oil from Russia. Yet a new 10-year defense framework pledges $500 billion bilateral trade by 2030, including GE F414 jet engine co-production. As External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar quipped in a June 2025 interview, and I quote him, in a G20 world, India does not choose sides, it shapes the board. Unquote. This assertiveness, evident in G20's 2023 African Union inclusion, has burnished India's stature, but tariffs and Russia oil sanctions expose vulnerabilities in strategic autonomy. UPA's caution built bridges, NDA forges alliances, but sustaining them demands deft navigation of US-China bipolarity, lest India becomes a pawn in great power games. UPA's economic stewardship rode a global boom, clocking an average GDP growth of 7.7% between 2004 and 2014, peaking at 9.3% in 2007. This growth was fueled by FDI liberalization and SEZ proliferation that drew $305 billion inflows. Per capita income surged 2.64 times, outpacing NDA's 1.89-fold rise. Yet UPA2's 5.5% average masked inflation spikes to 11.9% post-2008 crisis and subsidy burdens at 2.5% of GDP as global headwinds exposed over-reliance on service exports. NDA recalibrated towards Atmanirbharta or self-reliance, with GDP rebounding to 8.2% in financial year 24 post-COVID, though 2025 projections hover at 6.8% amid tariff shocks. Make in India lured $607 billion FDI by 2025, but production-linked incentive or PLI schemes yielded mixed results. Electronics exports doubled to $25 billion, yet manufacturing's GDP share stagnates at 17%. Protectionism via 100% local sourcing mandates shields jobs but invites WTO disputes. Trump's August 2025 tariffs on steel and pharmaceuticals could shave 0.5% of the growth as per IMF estimates. Economist Kaushik Basu argues that NDA's reforms turbocharged infrastructure but inequality widened. Analytically, UPA's openness catalyzed scale. NDA's inward tilt fosters resilience, but in a fragmenting global order, hybrid strategies, blending FTAs with the EU and UK may reconcile growth with sovereignty, averting a lost decade of stagnation. UPA's defense budgets rose 50% to 2.53 lakh crore rupees by 2014. This went into the procurement of C-17 Globemasters and raising Mountain Strike's score against China. There was emphasis on development of Tejas fighters, but scams like the 2012 Augusta Westland helicopters hampered efficacy, resulting in 60% import dependency. NDA's FY26 defense budget rose by 13% to 6.81 lakh crore rupees. Production soared 90% to 1.51 lakh crore rupees in FY25. The August 2025 Defense Procurement Manual streamlines acquisitions, prioritizing MSMEs and AI integration. Exports hit $2.5 billion, which included drones to Armenia and BrahMos missiles to Philippines. The Indo-US Defense Pact included lease of Predator drone. It also bolsters maritime domain amid Red Sea disruptions. Yet, as strategic analyst C. Rajamohan points out, and I quote him, self-reliance is aspirational, but border standoffs reveal tech gaps. India's R&D spend lags 0.7% of GDP, unquote. UPA-led modernization foundations. NDA's indigenization accelerates deterrence, but fiscal trade-offs, defense at 2.4% GDP, could strain welfare, underscoring the need for balanced securitization in an era of hybrid threats. UPA's 2009 National Skill Development Policy targeted 500 million trainees by 2022. This complemented the Right to Education Act's enrollment push, which boosted gross enrollment ratios to 96% in elementary schools. Yet quality lagged. Annual Status of Education report showed 50% grade 5 students unable to read grade 2 texts, exposing urban-rural divides. NDA's Skill India and National Education Policy of 2020 institutionalized vocationalism. It restructured curricula to 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 and embedded skilling from class 6. By 2025, foundational literacy and numeracy covers 80% of grade 3 students in pilot states. Common University entrance test for postgraduate admissions digitized 2025 entries, and Diksha platforms trained 2 million teachers. Cross enrollment ratio in higher education hits 28%, with multidisciplinary universities rising 20%. National education policies equity focus, that is 50% gross enrollment ratio by 2035, aligns with Viksit Bharat, but implementation gaps persist. According to the Ministry of Education's 2025 report, only 30% states fully adopt multilingualism. To take advantage of the demographic dividend, it is essential to bridge 250 million unskilled youth. Otherwise, India's human capital risks obsolescence in AI driven economies. UPS ethos was coalitional conciliation, with secularism tempering majoritarian impulses. This became evident in such a committee affirmations for Muslims. Yet, minority appeasement tropes fueled BJP's 2014 surge. NDA's tenure has amplified Hindutva. Article 370's abrogation in 2019 and CAA NRC 2019 polarized electorates along religious lines. By 2025, post 2024 polls where BJP relied on TDP and JDU, polarization has peaked. The Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project shows 30% rise in communal violence, driven by Ram Temple mobilization. VDEM, also known as Varieties of Democracy, indices rank India a closed autocracy contender, citing media curves and ED raids on the opposition. Congress's Shashi Tharoor observes, and I quote him, polarization turns adversaries into enemies, eroding debate for dogma. Unquote. UPA's inclusivity bred gridlock. BJP's majoritarianism delivers, but at democracy's cost. However, 2024's coalition revival may temper extremes, fostering hybrid federalism. From UPA's welfare webs to NDA's muscular mandates, Indian politics has traversed inclusivity to indigenization. Yet tariffs, polarization, and inequities portend perils. Amartya Sen urges, and I quote him, democracy thrives on argument, not assent. Unquote. Hopefully, this will forge a sustainable all round development. India's genius lies not in rupture but renewal. In case you have liked my video, please do like, subscribe, comment, and share. Thank you.